Hello, welcome to our module on getting organized for artists. I'm Jack LaHave, joined by Ruth Lance. This program was brought to you by Creative Lattice, Crit Connection, and Public Art for Racial Justice Education. Creative Lattice is a free website for artist professional development where you can find lots of videos just like this one. Ruth, do you want to give 2 seconds on Crit Connection?
Hi, Ruth. Yeah, so Crit Connection is just a networking platform for artists where artists are introduced to a fellow maker each month and then they can connect however they want. A lot of people do studio visits, virtual or in real life.
Wonderful. And so today we're talking about getting organized. Um, Especially, we had a meeting recently with a bunch of artists, and we're talking about getting organized for the new year. Because we're recording this in December, and a lot of artists are thinking of their 2025. And so first of all, why even get organized, right? We're all kind of living our crazy lives sometimes, but apparently it'll lead to less stress. You can focus on accomplishing your goals better, align our daily goals with the long-term results. So that means, focus on your to-do list on what your long-term results you want to do if you want to make more money or have a gallery, and then simplifying with clear priorities.
And sometimes organization feels like a Sisyphean, like you're rolling that rock up the hill all the time and it just keeps rolling back down at you. But
Yeah,
it
especially the
does,
life of the artist, right?
yeah, but I think it does lighten your load when
Yeah.
you have those goals in mind.
And we're going to talk a lot I mean, this hopefully will be a short presentation. But we're going to talk a lot about vision, understanding what you want to accomplish. And I think that's part of like the Sisyphus nature of being an artist is, you roll the rock up the hill and it rolls back down. But like, I think a lot of that and we speak about this a lot in our videos, which you can find at the website, creativelattice.com. uh, we talk about it a lot in terms of the art careers feel kind of amorphous, and there's not like a set path that anyone teaches you. And so understanding like what are the things we want from it and what is the path that we want to carve out is really difficult. And I think that's what sort of makes that rock really impossible to get up a hill because we don't even know where the hill is.
Or how high it is,
Yeah,
or
and
any of that. Yeah.
yeah, what the rock is made out of.
Yeah.
All right, vision. All right, self-reflection here we think is the key. Review last year's achievements and challenges. That's, a big one. Looking back, so I do this every year. I spend time at the end of the year and I try and look back and then look forward. Define your success and focus on what aligns with your values. And values, I also find to be a really hard one because everyone talks about them, but in truth, values seem to always be changing. Sometimes, you can have a ton of values like being financially solvent. Taking care of your family, taking care of your friends. But let's say you spent a week taking care of your friends, that then is probably going to go a little down in your immediate values list, and then something else will take its place. So I find values to be kind of, you have basic ones, but they're kind of always changing a little bit. Yeah, Ruth.
Well, I agree with that, but I think sometimes setting, even for some of us, even just finding those core values
Hmm.
can be challenging.
Yeah.
Like how much time you spend on your family, how much time you spend on your friends. So sometimes even just doing a little exercise where you could like find the core ones that need to come to the top, mental health or whatever, because sometimes those core values even get pushed down.
Maybe we need a full discussion on values and how to find them because I would like to figure that out too. Something I've always struggled with is like, yeah, understanding my values and then what to concentrate on both this week and for longer term goals. But I
Well,
think,
I think sometimes we understand them, we just don't know how to privilege them.
mhm. Yeah, and we live them without necessarily putting them into words. Um, I think that also happens often. Uh, but I heard a tip a few years back about going through your photos on your phone from the previous year and looking at what brought you joy. And I know as like an artist myself, I like have lots of images of my artwork in there. So like see what types of artwork I created gave me joy, or which shows I look back on. I'm like, oh, that one was really fun, and then saying why, and then how to make that happen more.
And I mean, I teach, so I have a lot of student artwork on my phone, and I know that when I see something where I'm like, oh, they came a long way, or like teaching is really important to me. So
Hmm.
I think that always makes me feel good too, helping others.
Yeah. So it's, a little shortcut to thinking about the past through your photos and what you found value in taking pictures of, and then that can help guide your future and say, I want more of that.
It's
Um,
also a good time to delete your screenshots.
yep. Oh, yeah. Hopefully there's an AI that'll do that at some point. Um, all right. So then next up, we want to talk about writing a vision board, or at least some sort of vision planning. Some people do the vision board, and I know Ruth, you talked about it like sounding kind of cheesy to like, you don't want to paste a photo of a Ferrari up there if that's like, yeah, I don't know.
I
I don't
thought
know
it was
what.
cheesy until I did it.
Yeah.
I didn't do like a visual vision board. I just kind of wrote things, but
Yeah. But that's what people think about, is that like visual vision board. And for some people it's helpful. I don't do that. I do a text-based one, and as
Mhm.
we'll show you a little bit later in an example, I do one where I write down like 1 year from now, what do I want my life to look like? 3 years from now, and then 10 years from now. And I think that type of vision planning helps you understand a little bit more, like what do you want? Do you want like of course, we want like a review and art forum if you're trying to do an art career. But like, what are some other, I don't even know if I want that. Like, what is that going to get me? That's the Sisyphus nature, right?
Mhm.
Um,
And I like, tangible sort of visions versus visions that are like expected of us versus visions that make us happy. Like I think doing that sort of thing also helps us figure that out, which was something why I thought it was cheesy. I was like, oh God, you know, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna put all these things that I think I want, and then they're not actually what I want.
and
But
they don't feel achievable, right? Like getting a review in art forum doesn't really feel achievable. Um, there's so many things that like are sort of dependent on luck. So I think, also it's good to both shoot for the stars, but also do things that we talk a lot about goals and then SMART goals, and this SMART, where it's something that's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. So like, let's say you're not selling much work, but you want to make at least $5,000 in sales. That's probably achievable for most people. I want to do it over the next year. That's making it time bound. It's relevant because it's relevant to your practice and your career. It's achievable. It's measurable. It's $5,000, and it's specific. So that's I think, kind of the type of things we're looking at.
mhm.
We also talked about you can work backwards, so reverse engineering some of these goals. So, like, let's say you really want that solo museum show, and so start thinking about like, well, in order to get that, the curators have to know about me. So then I need to research curators that would show my type of work. And then like, if in order to reach out to the curators, I need to have my website updated. I need to have my like marketing materials in place. I need to have a clean studio if I'm having a studio visit, and then I need to have the body of work. So that type of reverse engineering could help you with some of these bigger amorphous goals.
And I also think this helps with values because, like, as you start kind of reverse engineering what you think you want or what you what you want or what you think you might want as you kind of think about all those other things that it entails. It might point out to you, oh no, wait, I'm gonna have to compromise something that is really important to me in order to get there. So you might find another way to do it or an alternate path or that's actually not that important to you.
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes reverse engineering things can point out um other elements of your life to you.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's also something called the five whys. We're not talking about it in this slideshow, but that comes a lot up for me in like things that we're doing. So for a solo museum show, you ask yourself, well, why do you want a solo museum show? And it's to gain like cultural credibility. But why do you want cultural credibility? And you keep asking yourself why until you kind of get to the bottom of is this important for your big picture or your inner values? So it's always good to be asking why at this time of year when you're trying to organize the big picture stuff, right? We talk about layering goals. So short term up is like upcoming deadlines. You know, I have an exhibition in February, so a lot of things have to happen before that. I need to, you know, think about if I want a card. I need to think about what's going to be in the exhibition. Do I have that work ready? Or, you know, or does anything need to get framed? Midterm could be like grants that you want to apply to, curators you want to reach out to. Um, Long term, again, we were just talking about like that solo museum show or a major project that's, you know, taken you 10 years and you want to really um, finish it up. And then all of this is overwhelming, right? Um, so how to prioritize, and I have a really hard time with this, but we looked it up and it's something called the Eisenhower matrix. Seems to be pretty simple. It's, you know, it seems um, common sense that, you know, you have your urgent and important things that you have to do now, like framing the work for the upcoming show. You have your important but not urgent stuff, like reaching out to another curator. And so that you can schedule time for. And then you have your not important stuff, like having a meeting with the local coffee shop owner or something. I don't know what that would be, but those types of things you just need to try and eliminate. And that's my life now is all about elimination, but it's really hard to figure out what's urgent and what's important and then what is not important. I don't know if you have any tips for that, Ruth.
well, I think this has, it has a lot to do with trying to figure like it's so hard a lot of times to figure out like what's a good opportunity, what's a necessary opportunity, what's a bad opportunity. And
Hmm.
I think it has a lot to do with that, which goes back to kind of reverse engineering what you want out of life.
Yeah,
Um, so I think once we start doing that, once we start figuring out like the big picture goals, this becomes easier. Um,
totally.
but just as like a simple organizational tool, somebody in the group talked about just using post-its
Yeah.
and having like a do now schedule sort of and moving them over and around, which for visual people could be really helpful.
And I have like a brain dump list where I dump like just anything that I think about and then I have a what's it called? I have something that's like on the back burner. And normally if things are on the back burner for a few months, they're not important and then they fall off. So that's a lot of the non-important stuff. If you just can't get to it, that means it's not important.
Mhm.
So then building support systems and a lot of, you know, we have both of us have accountability, different accountability groups, and that's something we can get into in another video. But it's great to have like a peer group of artists that you can even ask these questions like, hey, I'm meeting with a supposed to meet with a local coffee shop owner, Ruth. Is that like something I should be doing? And if Ruth is someone I've been meeting with for a while, she'll say, well, it's not really like your goal is to get like big gallery shows. Like don't do it. It's not worth your time. So having these, you know, having people that you can lean on for support or that's for um, maybe more established artists, but then having a mentor too, right? Like that's super important. I don't feel like I have a good one, but if you had one, you could go to them for advice. Focus on selective opportunities, aligning your applications and saying yes with these goals and values. Again, same thing. Figuring out what you want and then saying yes to the things that will get you there. Um,
Which
next,
isn't always the easiest thing, right? To
that's
know.
so hard. That's why you need to block out time to take care of it. Yeah. More systems. So, you can, studio time is really important. So you can block out specific times. I know a lot of artists do their admin on Monday and then their outreach on Thursday or whatever works for you, right? So try and block out time in your calendar to get done the things that need to get done. Project management tools a lot of people use are like Trello or Miro, or OneNote is a free one. And then I use a whiteboard for quarterly planning, and we'll get into that in a minute. And then having your toolkit ready. Erica Hess from the I Like Your Work podcast is awesome. And
Mhm.
she gave a talk for us that she talked about applications and sort of getting organized for applications and having a toolkit. And so that's having your CV, your statement, your images all ready to go. And then when it's time to apply to something, boom, 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 you send it out, and you're not really starting from scratch every time.
And keep that updated, I think, is the key.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
that's
and
a
that's like so much simpler to do if you're putting one or two things on your CV as opposed to 40, you know? So,
yeah.
and that's something you could do
Visual.
on Monday,
Yeah.
right?
All right, so let's switch streams here for a second. And look at this quarterly whiteboard. And as Ruth told me, the beginning of this looks a little like holy shit, and I really like systems and like nested I like nested documents. So this is mine, or at least a template of mine, which we'll share on the website if anyone is interested. And I'm just going to run through this super quick, or at least the first part, and we'll dig in. First part is something that I do every 3 months. So this is like my Q4, quarter four of 2024, October through November and December. I have on the left just some like general stuff, like I write down any successes I've had. I write down any opportunities that I might want to target. I'll have usually my mission and an elevator speech there, just so I'm reminded of those big picture things. And then I have in December what I'm really digging into, and I update this at the first of the month. So, outreach, show prep, sales, marketing, making art, service, and hobby. Those are like my big categories. Then I
Now,
have,
I have a question. Do you update, so you update this at the first of the month?
yep,
Do you continually go back to it to update it, or is it just like a one and done sort of situation?
the top, I often will not really go back. So this is a section that I go back to. This is sort of like a weekly like to-do list, and I do this every like Friday. I put all the things that I haven't gotten done back in the to-do list, and then I reorganize it on Monday of what I need to get done for the week. Um, but that's, everyone is going to have a different method. Um, this is just a way of like thinking about some of the bigger goals that I want to accomplish. And then I see if I've gotten it done or if I push it off to the next month, right?
Hmm.
All right, so then I do my weeklies. I have like certain weekly things that I always do. I have a problem with spaghetti, which is throwing spaghetti on the wall, and that's like, hey Ruth, like it would be awesome if we did this project together, and then we have to do that project together, and I have too many of those things that are floating around, so I try and record my spaghetti, and or like when people ask me to do something, I record it down and say, because I'm a yes person, so I say, ugh, I said yes to this, and I really shouldn't have. And so I try and record it in order to be more mindful so I can say no. Um, organize weekly on Mondays. Um, I have an ongoing project because I have too many projects and I hot link to that and I try and review that on Mondays. I do time tracking so that I can know through the year, how much time I spent on my email, how much time I spent on making art, and how much time really I spend all my time on family, which is good, but I need to spend more time in the studio. And then every Friday, I do a quick bank audit so that I'm on top of my finances. And and I make sure to clean up my desktop and download folders. I know that really scares a lot of people, but I did that like 6 months ago. I made a rule where like everything it has to be clean, and that really changed a lot for me. That like now I can like see what I'm doing a lot easier. If I find working in a cluttered space to be really difficult. So that's it. There's templates here. I usually archive all that stuff. And there's like a little nested archiving of that. And then we have the big picture stuff. So that's just the weekly and quarterly. And then big picture is what we kind of want to talk about for the organization for the year. Um, I just made these categories. Like everybody's going to have their own categories. Making art is going to be a big one for us artists. Exhibitions, sales, marketing, logistics, like cleaning the studio or inventorying stuff. Art writing is something that I do that like feeds my career. Or just, that's like reviewing shows, but you can also just, write about your art, and that's also something really important. Service I have in there. I feel like that's, an important part of life and good for society if you can do it. Um, Meetings, I put meetings in there and I try and have my meetings after 3. And Ruth, if you'll note, we're meeting at 4. Um,
Hmm.
that's my like tired time. So I schedule meetings for later in the day when I don't have as much energy and it's a little easier to, I find meetings to be easier to do than like, I don't know, writing that grant proposal. Um, so I,
I completely agree with that.
so I save that for the important time. And then income streams, where is your funding coming from? That's another like big thing. So I need to apply to more grants or I want to do more murals. And so each of these sections, you can spend 2 minutes just being like exhibition. I want to, focus on getting a solo gallery show. Um, I usually also write down what worked and what didn't and put that in terms of income, cultural relevance. So I sort of separate income and cultural relevance. Cultural relevance is like having a having a show usually. It doesn't always lead to sales, whereas income is something that is like a little bit different. Like shows can lead to sales, but they're really like, especially like I do museum shows, like they don't make money. um, and so I sort of separate the two. I don't know if that's useful or not.
Yeah, I do a lot of like institutional teaching spaces shows too.
Yeah,
That's not their goal either.
yeah.
So,
But it lends you credibility, and therefore people who want to buy your work are like, oh, well, they had a show here. They're like an actual working artist, right?
hmm.
Um, Marketing is a big thing to think about, and we need to dig into that more on our website. Um, Networking and outreach, we have a bunch of modules on that, but who are you meeting and are you following up with them? And then I put service in again, like because service can also become a time suck, so it's something to be um, mindful of. Is like
which
what service are you doing? And yeah,
which I think includes teaching for a lot of people,
definitely teaching is a huge service, and
which completely becomes a time suck.
yeah, especially if you're not careful, there's a lot of people in academia that will use you and your time to do their work for them. So,
Hmm. Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so realizing that and what's working, what's not. Then I have like a big list. Somebody mentioned that it was called a big list, so I put that there. But these are I have short-term goals and then longer-term goals. Like longer-term goals make culturally relevant and accessible work. that is like a big goal. It's not a smart goal, and the short goals are more are trying to be more smart goals. So I would like refining my current works and making them large scale. And I would probably, this is a template, so I would probably dig into that a little more and say, refine my current series of abstracts and make at least three 72-inch paintings, right? Like for the next, in the next 6 months. So something that's like very tangible.
So I also, when I set goals, I also always write them down and hang them on my studio wall.
Mhm.
So like if you're like, I mean, and this is like different than not as organized as this, right? So this is in tandem with this, but just so I another type of visualization.
Yep.
Um, I like to keep them in my studio. So if I, refine current works and make larger scales, I would like pin that to my wall.
Totally.
So it was always there.
And this is, it's called a whiteboard because it comes from having a whiteboard in your space where you write down a lot of this stuff. Um, and so, I tried having that, but I like my studio to be like, I like my downloads folder now. I like it to be a cleaner space so that I can see what's happening. Um, so I'm trying to remove stuff. So that's why I keep it all in nested documents at this point. I have self-care and values here. Again, your mission, whatever that is. This is, kind of my mission, make traveling museum shows while having a concrete body of work to sell, continue to build community while retelling personal and historical narratives, blah, 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 blah. And then an elevator pitch, which is kind of like I make blank for blank and it helps them blank. Um, that's a traditional elevator pitch. Art is a little ephemeral in what it helps people do, um, but knowing your audience can help you refine that elevator pitch, and we can get into that a different time. If you have a brand statement, that's kind of, nobody likes talking about brand in the arts, but it's a matter of style and how people recognize your work. So my work looks like, or you could say, people recognize my work by XYZ. And that I think is an important thing for a long-term career. Um, but again, a more complex issue that, we can talk about the value of that for an artist in their career. Um,
I also think a brand statement is really important for people who are not familiar with the arts.
mhm,
It's like an easier entry point.
yeah. So I kind of separated my ideal artist life from my ideal career, and that's part of this like understanding what you want. um but like things, an ideal artist career, it sounds fun to travel a bunch and support other artists and to be sought after. I just, these are kind of like a little bullshitty, but this is part of your vision board and thinking about like what might be important to you, right? So like um, creativity and creating, and I'm like an analytical person. So these are just like things that I've written down. Um, or like I wrote down some happiness tracking. I don't know, just whatever works for you. This isn't going to be great for everyone, but I like going back to these things of like what makes me happy, like new activities. I like to meditate. I like making funny artworks. I like having food with friends and family. So and then your vision planning, right? The 1 year vision, like what does your home look like? Your family. I live in X, um, and at home I have children or I don't have children, and we're really busy hosting friends all the time. So that's what I wrote down and how I see myself living in the next year. But let's say I didn't want that. So in my 5 year plan, I'd say I'm hosting less because I want to cut down. Financially, I'm making X and I can put X into savings is a great thing. I do self-care. And this is, these are I don't know why that's there, but these are the elements of self-care that I've been doing. This is like what I do for health. These are sort of like my big, I call them domains, but this is like the big areas that I concentrate on is my family, my financial well-being, self-care, health, mental and physical, spiritual, if you get into that, and then some hobby stuff, which is a little complicated when you're an artist, right? Of like your art might be your hobby if like you spend all your time at a desk job. Um, or I don't know. It gets complicated, right, Ruth?
Yeah, I find hobbies hard,
Yeah.
mostly because most of the things that I am drawn to are also creative.
Yep.
And then they always just get drawn back into my art. So, yeah, I find hobbies difficult.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, I want to do a project with this new thing I just learned.
Yep.
So hobbies get a little wishy-washy for me.
But like right now, my big hobby is that every year I make some artist menorahs, and they're not really like a part of my art practice. And now they're coming into my art practice, as you just said, but they've been a hobby. Like it's something that like if I'm spending an hour in the studio, I'm working on the big abstracts. And the hobby is like a little on the side, and I'll try and do some when I can. Um, so it's like a little less important, right, than your like main career practice. And that's something to think about in like the brand, right? Is like if your hobby is like knitting and you're like an abstract painter, you can work it in there, but like you have to also think about that a lot.
Hmm. Just like, I really like to read, but I have to stop myself from reading books about what I'm researching for my art, right? So it's like allowing myself to enjoy just reading or knitting or whatever. So,
I call it the Law and Order. Like my sister is really into Law and Order as like a winding down, but like it's not like being intellectual or anything, like it's not
yeah,
being intellectual. It's like the wind down stuff, and like you have to
right.
give yourself wind down stuff. That's your self-care.
Yeah, RuPaul's Drag Race. That's what
Yeah,
I watch to
exactly.
wind down.
Like it's not, it doesn't have to be a part of your work. It doesn't have to be a part of anything. It's just something you can do that's not a part.
Hmm.
Um, write down where you see your studio practice, write down where you see your show, um, and try and be like pretty specific if you can. Write down your financial stuff, like I'm being compensated for my time and value, both in my art, and my regular time more. So that's, always a great one. PR is, that's your PR and marketing. So like, how is your social media? Where do you see, I want to not do any social media in the next year. So that's maybe a thing. I want to make sure my website's up to date, sending out a quarterly email, sending out a holiday card if you can. Um, General, these are other general things. So all this, we can put on the website. And then I do that for like how I envision myself in 3 years. And if you like I have a big trip planned, or I'm going to try and do a residency in like a foreign feeling place. And then a 5-year vision plan. Some people do a 10-year vision plan. I find that a bit far out, but I want to be making $1 million a year, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's good to dream big so then we can, try and work backwards and engineer how
Hmm.
that happen.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right.
But I just think it's important to remember that, like, if this is brand new to you,
Oh yeah.
bite off what you can chew,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. These
Start
are
with a year, start with a month, kind of
totally.
figure out what works for you.
These
Figure
are
out how to schedule studio time, like,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you're starting from the beginning, having just one thing that you do is usually good enough. And like get like if you're an artist, getting studio time is probably most
mhm,
important.
mhm.
Before anything else, before website, before like contacting curators, just like being able to spend like an hour in the studio is going to be your main goal, and you put that on the top of your list, and And that's the start.
Yeah, because you have to start somewhere.
And
Self-compassion.
well, that brings us to self-compassion, and we're almost done. So be kind to yourself, forgive missed goals, start small, and celebrate those small wins. Um, I keep another list that was on the top of my whiteboard list, but I keep a list of any successes that come my way, just so I can review them. Um, and that's yeah, Ruth.
I do too. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be this like a huge success. Like send an email to someone I've been wanting to contact for a month, like got it done. Like it
Yep,
doesn't have to be like sold a work to MoMA,
yep.
right?
Yeah. And it's always good. So, and the good thing about those is then I end up revisiting it when I come to my quarterly news blast. And and it gives me a good hint of what went down in the last, few months, if anything. Um, and then it's a good way to like just be grateful of your what you're doing. But if you're putting yourself out there, then you're probably getting some stuff coming back your way. And even if we talked a lot we have a mental health module, but we talked a lot about that imposter syndrome or feeling like the things that you get aren't good enough. But you need to write them down and you need to revel in them.
And it's just important to remember that you're a human
Yeah.
and everyone who's looking at your work is human.
Yep.
And, they're feeling a lot of the same things you are, so you can connect with them on that level.
Yep. And trying is good enough. Right.
Yeah.
All right, so closing thoughts. Schedule a time to review your big picture, align your daily actions with your long-term aspirations. Organization will give you more space for your creativity, even if it's just, getting that hour done in the studio. And then check out our other module, like building a happier art practice, the one I was just talking about with sort of, thinking a little bit more about mental health in the arts and how do we do this without feeling like Sisyphus rolling that rock up the hill. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. Please be sure to check out creativelattice.com, where we have a bunch more modules from everything from you can find out about getting a gallery, how to contact galleries, to networking, to finances, to using Instagram or not using Instagram, as I like to say.
Your choice. Your choice.
Sure. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.